This story will make you question every meal you've ever bought outside your home. Imagine eating your favorite meal in a restaurant, then finding out where it really came from. In a lively town of Ajade, along the dusty road that led to the crowded motor parks, there stood a small roadside restaurant made of zinc sheets and old planks. It wasn't fancy. The benches were uneven, the tables were worn out from years of use. But every single day, the place was full. People came from everywhere just to eat food cooked by the woman who owned it. Her name was Mama Kudirat. Every morning before the sun rose, Mama Kudirat would be awake by 5:30 a.m. Smoke from her charcoal stove would begin coiling into the pale morning sky. The smell of onions frying in hot oil, mixed with fresh pepper and spices, would slowly be drifting through quiet streets of Ajade by 6:30 a.m. The first customers would start arriving. Motorcycle riders parked their bikes in front of the shops. Bus drivers shouted greetings from across the road. Traders carrying baskets of tomatoes and peppers stopped by for breakfast before heading to the market. "Mama, could you give me pounded yam? And that's your special soup," one driver would shout. "Add 2 big pieces of meat for me," another man would say quickly. Mama Kudirat always responded with the same warm smile. "Sit down, my brother. Your food is ready." Her hands moved quickly and confidently while she served plates of hot food. The thick soup shimmered with palm oil, filled with tender pieces of meat that were soft enough to fall apart at the touch of a spoon. Customers often shook their head in amazement as they ate. "Ah, Mama Kudi, this your soup no get rival," a trader would say with satisfaction. Another person might laugh and add, "If person chop food once here, now only here e go dey come." People loved her, not just because of the taste of her soup, but by the way she treated everyone. She greeted customers kindly, asked about their families, sometimes even add extra meat for those she knew were struggling. To the people of Ajade, Mama Kudirat was a blessing, but no one really knew much about her. 5 years earlier, she had simply arrived in the town with her teenage daughter Aminat. They rented a small room behind the restaurant and quietly started their new life. Aminat was the complete opposite of her cheerful mother. She was quiet, shy, and rarely spoke to anyone. Most days, she simply helped wash plates and clean tables while avoiding eye contact with customers. People assumed that they were just a humble family trying to survive. And for a long time, that seemed to be true. In fact, during the first year after opening her restaurant, Mama Kudirat's business had been a complete failure. Customers ignored her food stall. They preferred to eat at other nearby restaurants that were more popular. Days would pass by, with only 1 or 2 customers stopping by. Many nights, Mama Kudirat closed her shop with unsold food still sitting in the pots. Sometimes, she would sit quietly on a wooden stool long after everyone had gone home, staring at the dark road with tired eyes. Those were difficult days. But everything changed after one strange night. The night Mama Kudirat disappeared into the forbidden forest of Igboyun. And when she returned the next morning, her cooking was never the same again. The morning after Mama Kudirat returned from Igboyun forest, something about her felt different. At first, nobody noticed it. She opened her restaurant like she always did. The charcoal stove cracked softly as she placed a large black pot on top of it. She poured palm oil into the pot, added onions, pepper and spices, and began stirring slowly. But the smell that rose from that pot was not the usual smell people knew. It was richer, stronger, and almost irresistible. A bus driver walking past suddenly stopped. He sniffed the air once, then twice. "Who dey cook this kind sweet soup this early morning?" he muttered. He felt his feet carry him straight to Mama Kudirat's store. "Good morning, Mama Kudi," he said. "Abeg, give me small food make I taste am." Mama Kudirat smiled calmly, as if nothing unusual had happened. "Sit down, my brother," she said softly. "Food is ready." Within minutes, the driver was eating. The moment the first spoon entered his mouth, his eyes widened. Then he slowly shook his head in disbelief. "Ha, Mama Kudi, what did you put inside this stew?" Mama Kudirat only chuckled quietly. "Just normal ingredients too," she replied. But the driver knew that was not true. By midday that same day, more customers had begun arriving. A trader told another trader. Before long, the small restaurant that once struggled to get even one or two customers was suddenly filled with people. "Add more meat for me here. This soup is too sweet." From that day onward, business never slowed down again. Within weeks, Mama Kudirat's restaurant became the most popular food spot in Ajade. Drivers passing through town stopped there. Market women brought their friends. Even people from nearby villages began traveling just to taste the famous soup. And strangely enough, no one could ever explain why it tastes so good. It was not just delicious, it was addictive. People who ate there once always came back again. Meanwhile, Mama Kudirat quietly hired 3 workers to help with the growing crowd. There was Bola, a sharp young woman who served food and cleaned tables. There was Sadiq, a tall man who handled heavy pots and helped customers carry their plates. And there was Mama Ronke, an older widow who washed plates and prepared ingredients in the kitchen. Together, they worked from early morning until late evening, struggling to keep up with endless stream of hungry customers. But after some months, the workers began to notice something strange. Every morning, when Mama Kudirat went to the market, she bought vegetables, pepper, onions and spices, but she never bought meat. Not once. At first, Bola thought maybe Mama Kudirat bought meat very early before the market opened. But one afternoon, while slicing tomatoes, Bola finally spoke. "Mama," she asked curiously, "every day we buy pepper, we buy fish, we buy vegetables, but I never see you buy meat for market." Mama Kudirat stopped as she was stirring the pot for a brief moment. Then slowly she smiled with a calm smile. But something about it made Bola feel very uneasy. "I have a supplier," Mama Kudirat replied. "A supplier?" Bola asked. "Yes," she said. "He brings the meat to me every morning, very early, before anyone wakes up." Bola frowned slightly. "Before morning?" Mama Kudirat nodded yes. Deep inside, something about that answer did not sit well with her. And over the next few weeks, the workers began to notice even stranger things. Sometimes when they arrived early in the morning, the stew pot was already warm, even though no one had lit the fire yet. Other times, Sadiq would open a pot and find fresh meat already inside, even though nobody had gone to the market. Mama Ronke, who had worked for many food sellers in her life, quietly shook her head in one afternoon. "My spirit no rest for this place," she whispered. Bola looked at her nervously. "Why you talk like that, Mama Ronke?" The old woman lowered her voice. "There are some blessings that do not come from a clean place." Bola tried to ignore the fear creeping into her heart. But deep down, she could not shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong inside Mama Kudirat's kitchen. For many weeks, Bola tried to ignore the strange feelings growing in her heart. She told herself it was none of her business where Mama Kudirat bought her meat. After all, the job paid well, and in a town like Ajade, good work was not easy to find. Every day, the restaurant remained crowded. Laughter, clattering plates, and rich smell of soup filled the air from morning until evening. Yet, the strange signs never stopped. Sometimes, the stew would bubble quietly even when no fire burned beneath the pot. Other times, a faint smell, something sour and unpleasant, would drift through the kitchen before suddenly disappearing. Mama Ronke often shook her head silently while washing plates, but no one spoke about it openly. Until the night everything changed. One evening, after closing the restaurant, Bola walked home with other workers as usual. The moon hung low in the sky, casting pale lights on the quiet road. Halfway home, her hand slipped into her pocket. Her heart dripped. "Oh, my purse," she whispered. Inside the bag was her phone and small money that she had saved for weeks. She remembered clearly leaving it beside the food shelf in the kitchen. She hesitated. It was already late, but the restaurant was only a short walk away. "I'll just pick it up quickly," she told herself. Turning around, Bola hurried back to the shop. The streets were silent. Most houses had already gone dark, and the only faint chirping crickets filled the night air. As she approached the restaurant, something strange caught her attention. A dim light flickered inside the building. Bola slowed her steps. "Mama Kudi never go sleep," she murmured. The front door was unlocked, but she moved quietly along the side wall. She noticed the back window slightly open. A strange sound drifted out. It was not the sound of cooking. It sounded like whispering. Soft, low, and almost like someone speaking to another voice. Her heart began to beat fast. Curiosity pulled her close. Slowly, she bent down and peeped through the narrow crack in the wooden wall. What she saw made her blood freeze. Inside the kitchen, Mama Kudirat stood beside the charcoal stove, but she was not dressed the way she usually was. She wore only a dark cloth tied around her waist. Her head was tied upward as she murmured strange words underneath her breath. The charcoal fire burned an unnatural blue light. The large pot on the stove boiled violently. Bola watched in horror as Mama Kudirat stretched out her arms. Her body suddenly began to tremble. Then something impossible happened. Small pale worms began crawling out of her skin. They slipped from her arms, her neck, and even her back. Within seconds, hundreds of them fell onto the floor. Bola clamped both hands over her mouth to stop a scream. The worms wriggled across the floor like living threads. Then one by one, they crawled straight into the boiling pot. The moment they touched the water, they changed. The worms transformed into fresh red meat. Tender, clean, exactly the meat they served customers every morning. Mama Kudirat smiled as she washed. Thank you," she whispered to the darkness. Bola stumbled backwards, shaking violently. Her legs barely carried her as she ran to the empty street. She did not stop running until she reached her house. That night, she lay awake until morning, and one terrible thought repeated itself in her mind again and again. What exactly had they been feeding the people of Ajade? Despite what she had seen, Bola said nothing the next morning. Fear sealed her lips. She arrived at the restaurant quietly and began her work like every other day. Customers soon filled the benches, laughing and enjoying their meals. Meanwhile, Mama Kudirat behaved exactly as usual. Days passed, and Bola prayed every night that this terrible secret would somehow disappear. But secrets have a way of forcing themselves into the open. One hot afternoon, when the restaurant was full of hungry customers, a sudden scream came from the kitchen. Ah! It's burning me! It's burning me! And that voice was Mama Kudirat's voice. Everyone turned at once. Chairs scraped loudly across the floor as people rushed towards the kitchen. They found Mama Kudirat on the floor, clutching her stomach. Her face glistened with sweat. My stomach is burning. Customers stared in confusion. There was no fire anywhere, yet she screamed, as if flames were devouring her from the inside. Suddenly, she sat up violently. Her eyes rolled back, showing only the whites. Then she began shouting words no one expected to hear. I will confess, so. The entire room fell silent. Her voice became deeper, almost unnatural. I'm a witch, she cried. Gas fill the air. The meat you people eat, it does not come from animals, oh. It does not come from animals, oh. Mama Kudirat beat her chest widely. The meat comes from cursed worms that obey my spirit. Every night, they come from my body. A woman screamed and spat out her food. Another man fell to his knees in horror. Inside the kitchen, the large stew pot began bubbling violently. Then the most terrifying thing happened. The pieces of meat inside the pot started moving before everyone's eyes. The meat twisted and shrank and turned into wriggling worms. Customers ran towards the door in panic. Some vomited on the floor, while Bola stood froze in one corner, tears streaming down her face. So everything she had seen that night was true. The secret was no longer hidden, and the people of Ajade would never forget what they had just witnessed. Inside the restaurant, Mama Kudirat continued screaming, as if invisible hands were tearing her apart. They are coming after me, they are coming after me. The spirits are angry, the spirits are angry. Then she jumped on her feet and ran outside. Her wrapper slipped from her body, and she didn't even notice. She ran barefoot into the road, screaming, "I am finished. My power is gone." By evening, the ever-busy restaurant stood silent. The pots were abandoned, flies buzzed around the rotten stew, and no one dared to step inside again. But the story of what happened spread far beyond Ajade. People who had eaten in that restaurant became terrified. Bola, Sadiq, and Mama Ronke quietly left the town not long after, as they could no longer bear the shame of knowing that they had unknowingly served people evil food. Even years later, the abandoned restaurant remained empty, and the elders often use this story to warn children. Don't ever think that every good thing comes from a good place. Greed can make anybody do something bad and sell their soul. But know that the truth will always find its way